All right. Hold on a second. All right. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for hopping on the podcast today. Really appreciate it. With all the broker dealer consolidation that's going on out there over the last couple years, there's probably four or five really notable firms that sold during that time period. We just wanted to give a video to future financial advisors out there to help them stay calm and make the best decisions possible. Acquisitions could be extremely disruptive from a culture, technology, service, pricing, business momentum standpoint. But that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be detrimental to your business. In fact, most financial advisors agree a few years after a merger that it's typically a really good move. But the goal of this podcast today isn't to scare you if your firm was recently acquired, but really just to help you stay focused during a really turbulent time, help you define the steps you need to take in order to make a really informed and empowered decision without taking too much time or brain space away from your practice. And we have Jeff Nash, the CEO and co-founder of Bridgemark, to add some insights today. Jeff, I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, appreciate it, Corey. Thanks for doing this again.
Yeah. So, Jeff, I mean, throughout the time that we've been in the industry, I mean, both of us, we've been through this probably 10, 15, 20 different times with, firms. Yeah, even higher, for a financial advisor that potentially just got the news that their firm is moving. What is some of your advice to them to start out with?
First of all, just to put it in proper context, right? I mean, the advisors, this isn't new. This has been going on for as long as I've been in this business. And I mean, there were wirehouses that have consolidated, right? We saw that another big wave of that what happened during 2008. And just it's a continued trend of consolidation in this industry. It's just, I think it's hit now. It hit the insurance broker dealers. It's now hitting independent broker dealers. It's going to continue to hit boutique firms. We're going to see RIAs that are going to consolidate. That'll be the next wave of this, right? There is just this mass consolidation. A lot of it is there's a lot of money in this industry with capturing a lot of the opportunity in the consolidation. And I think the important thing from an advisor's perspective is to recognize, look, this may be disruptive to your business. And in fact, in most cases, it's going to be very disruptive to the business, right? Because you didn't ask for it. But what we also see on the back side of this is frequently, right, a typical scenario is as many as 80% of a financial advisor's firm will stay with the incumbent, right? So the firm sells, and we've seen that number range as low as 70% to as high as 90%. But the average is around 80% of advisors will typically stay with the firm. I think the interesting thing is if we actually surveyed the 100%, I think 100% of those advisors will actually feel like they ended up in a better spot. Most of those 80% that stayed and most of the 20% that leave also probably felt like they were in a better spot. And so the good news is while it's a disruption to the business, in many cases it's a healthy disruption to the business. And it really can be beneficial to the business to really help the business grow, to help the business monetize, help the business achieve better technology or scale or resources or support or whatever the things that might be needed for the individual financial advisor who's having to deal with this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's many cases where, just from an economic standpoint alone, being part of a larger organization, I mean, even your payout is being significantly improved just due to the size and scale of the firm that you're joining, and that's just on an economic standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, we see it, right? I mean, we talk about feel, fit, and financials every single day in everything we do. And it's really when your firm is sold, right? It's really important to kind of come back to that and understand, okay, things are changed, things are going to change. And how do I assess where I'm at today, what I need, and where's going to be the best place going forward? And all too often, when the firm has sold, right, everyone just focuses on the financials, the economics of the decision.
Yeah.
And I think that's somewhere you start to miss the boat. The incumbent, right, the acquiring firm is going to focus on the financials. The competitors, the recruiters in the industry are all focusing on financials. And what we know is financials are one leg of a three-legged stool.
Yeah.
right? And it's really critical to really assess where you're at. Like the first thing you should do when this announcement hits is really understand your business and where your business is at and where your business, what your business needs are into the future. So you can really try to figure out what is the right solution for your business.
For sure. I mean, that's definitely one of the points I wanted to make on the call today. I think something really important to understand when this goes through the news wire, there's going to be a lot of panic. All of a sudden, you're going to be getting phone calls, you're going to be getting emails, you're going to be getting DMs on LinkedIn from every recruiter in the industry, telling you that you need to make a decision fast and you need to make it and you need to act now. And that's really not the case. I mean, financial advisors in almost 100% of cases have, at least 6 to 12 months to really dig in here and and make a really smart decision for them and their clients. So one of the things that I just recommend in the very beginning whenever I talk with somebody is just to take a deep breath. And like you said, Jeff, think about maybe it's something you haven't thought of in a long time because you haven't been considering making a move, but what are your goals? What are your must-haves? What are your deal breakers? It's impossible to do effective due diligence unless you have these things clearly defined and you're using them as your true north in your due diligence. Otherwise, you're really going to get distracted by a lot of shiny objects like economics you talked about before, Jeff. So, this is really the perfect time to kind of sit down with a consultant like us that truly understands the industry, can give you an overview of the options out there so you could kind of select off the menu things that are really, really important to you and kind of go to market with more of a calculated plan instead of just picking up everyone's phone call that's inbound into your office.
You said two really important things I want to dig into actually. One is the time frame, right? So when you hear it in the news, right? So first of all, more often than not, or certainly frequently, you're going to hear rumors that your firm might be getting sold before it even is in the news. So you may actually have some lead time on this. Secondarily, if you don't, right, and or if you hadn't heard those rumors, then your first day you hear about it is on the day of announcement. You're still going to have months to be able to make that decision before the regulators approve the firm consolidation, before a transition would happen. And those months, in some cases, as we've seen, could actually be upwards of a year. What's also interesting, though, is we're actually seeing financial advisors unrelated to a transition, their firms being bought, actually picking firms on their own, joining broker dealers, realizing it's a bad decision and pivoting from that broker dealer. They've actually contacted us after they've made the bad decision, after they've moved their book, and they're now moving again in what could be a 6 or 9 month or 12-month window. We're seeing this happen and realizing they made a bad decision, and their clients are retaining with them. So that there is a free look that you can have with your clients where if you make a decision and it's not the right decision, it is not a lifetime decision that you're stuck with. So I think the time frame that people need to understand is really you have some time here to actually make a calculated, informed decision. I think that's number one that you just said. The other thing that you said that I think is really important is setting your goals and understanding your needs, your wants, your must-haves, your can't-haves, the deal breakers as we describe them. And what's interesting is if you don't do that, then the recruiters on the other side of the equation, right? Whether it's an independent industry recruiter who's selling, fear, whether it's the broker dealer who's acquired your broker dealer or the RIA who's acquired your RIA, right? Those folks are actually telling you what's important to you, right? Based on what their strengths are. And so if they're messaging to you what their strengths are of what's important and you haven't set your own kind of clear understanding of what's important, then you're just going to be listening to them. And that's how you kind of perpetuate that bad decision making, right? The perpetuated bad decision making is not having a clear set of what your goals are and listening to what other people are saying is what their strengths are and say, yeah, that sounds good, et cetera, and then making a decision based on that. So I think the real lesson here is number one, you have time in any of these decisions when your firm has been sold. And number two is you really want to get a clear understanding of what your needs and wants are so that you're not having other people telling you what their strengths are that you may or may not actually need for your priorities list.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of ways to get distracted and, having those things written down, documented is just really going to help you stay on the right path and not get distracted. I mean, Jeff, another point that, I want to make is that throughout this process with all of these different firms that have been acquired over our career, I think it's important for a financial advisor to understand while the right move might be right for 80% of the financial advisors that are getting acquired, the transition is never as easy as promised by the buying broker dealer. Like I always tell financial advisors, imagine onboarding 300 new clients to your practice all on the same day. I mean, there's going to be mistakes. Things are going to get a little bit sloppy. It's not going to be perfect no matter how well planned it is. So, no matter how smooth the transition is promised, there's going to be mistakes. And even if it's a perfect transition, there's going to be hiccups, learning curves of leveraging new tools, technology, resources inside of the new firm, understanding how the service and compliance team works. So when I follow up with these firms that have been acquired, 4 or 5 months later, sometimes just to see how things actually went. I mean, most financial advisors don't feel like they're truly back in their seats for at least 3 or 4 months at 100% capacity, which is pretty close to a full transition anyway. So I just think that's important for advisors to understand as they're going through this process. A lot of things will be promised, but just like joining another job, I mean, I've had other jobs in my career, and I've never liked any of them for the first 4 months because there's just so much growing pains and new systems and things you need to take care of. So even if it's a perfect transition, still a ton of work.
Yeah, it really is. It's as simple as, just the language can be different, right? Different firms have different acronyms that they use. I've been involved in this industry for a lot of years. I've done transitions, I've done broker-dealer acquisitions, I've done a lot of it. And to just help advisors who are listening to this kind of understand how mistakes get made, it's just human error. It's nothing that's malicious. It just can happen. And there's a lot more human involvement than you may think. And I've literally seen scenarios where you have an Excel spreadsheet, and that Excel spreadsheet may have 1,000 names on it for the 1,000 different financial advisors that were being acquired. And one name gets duplicated or one rep ID gets duplicated. And so then literally the entire list of what would be the 1,000 names could be off by one digit,
Oh,
right? And little things like that happen all the time. And so there is the risks of work, right? At the end of the day, when a firm is acquired, there's going to be some work. And the idea of, hey, I'm too busy to deal with this right now is an absolute strategy. But don't do it by accident. Do it with intent. And if you're focused on growth and you're focused on growing your business and you've got too much going on to deal with things, perfectly fine if that's your intent. But what you don't really want to do is bury your head in the sand, right? Because then you're just going to be what the reality is as financial advisors have success motivating clients and helping clients through difficult times, the same applies to themselves. And they really want to look at, is this the right firm? Is this the right solution for me? I know I don't have the time, but sometimes you just have to make the time and then you make a calculated, then you make a decision, right? Making the decision to stay, as we've talked about on this podcast, is a 70, 80, 90% choice decision. And more often than not, the vast majority of the times, advisors thrive in those decisions. We've seen a lot of advisors. There's still a difficult transition period typically, but they thrive in those decisions because they've made that decision. And when you're having a firm that's been acquired, right? And to just not make a decision is really not in the individual's best interest,
yeah.
right? And that's what happens. The one thing you have to remember about all of this is it's not just the transition, right? So how do transitions happen? And this is a little bit of a pet peeve for me, Corey. I'm going to go kind of down a little bit of a different path. The one thing I kind of hate in this industry is I hate how folks use the word loyalty when loyalty is really just a one-way street. Loyalty to me is always and only can and should be mutual, right? Married couple is loyal to each other, right? It's not a one-way loyalty scenario. And frequently, broker dealers will throw out that word loyalty to the advisors when there isn't a corresponding, loyalty back, right? The broker dealers have sold their business potentially for monetary reasons, potentially for succession reasons. whenever the sale has happened, there's always different reasons for it. It could be for better technology, right? It could be truly for the better benefit and the betterment of the financial advisors. Perfectly fine. But let's be clear, the ownership of the broker-dealer, whether it's institutional ownership or individual ownership, is making money out of it.
Yeah.
And they've made a calculated decision. They researched the marketplace. They probably even used an investment banker, right? Evaluated the marketplace, looked at the different firms, looked at the different solutions. Which firm did they choose at the end and why? Well, none of us will ever know the reasons, right? We all know one of the reasons will be because of money. We don't know all the reasons why they will have chosen that. And yet the firm spent months in many cases, if not years, evaluating and researching. And then there's an expectation on a shortened window that you're going to be loyal and kind of follow suit with the firm based on their decision for your benefit. And I just don't buy into that. I don't care for that. I think it can be clearly painted with the glass half full of, hey, these are the reasons why we did this, and we do think this is to your benefit. But that usually message gets lost and is just an expectation of loyalty. And that's an issue that I kind of have. It's a little bit of a pet peeve for me, by the way.
And I agree with you, Jeff, 100%. And I think that just kind of like ties back into the first point that I mentioned, and also one of the next ones, too. So many financial advisors will choose the path of least resistance because they'll be promised a tape to tape transfer or super easy transition, and everything has been super well thought out. And they just kind of blindly, with loyalty, take the leader's, message as 100% truthful. And I think it's extremely important to understand and just be, wary of what leadership is saying when you're going through this process. They're going to make this decision based off of their best interests as a corporation. And when they're telling you how great the new firm is going to be, how seamless the transition is going to be, at least look at it through a lens, knowing that they have a very heavily vested interest in you, going over to that new firm. I guess I'm really just shocked by how many times financial advisors will just blindly follow somebody like you were talking about before, Jeff, and just kind of take word for word. Everything that the leader is saying is fact, and move over to the new firm where they should at least be going out there and exploring two or three different firms to truly see if it is in fact the best fit for them and their clients.
I would even take it a step further where most financial advisors won't get a call from an unknown recruiter saying some kind of scare tactic and some kind of false innuendos, which happens, as we all know from recruiters, pushing XYZ firm, right? Many of these are independent recruiters who are just glorified cold callers. Some of them work for individual firms who are selling, they're selling, the sky, and the reality is it's not what they're selling. And this happens in the industry a lot with people who are just selling without providing really facts behind the sale. And the same is true for the incumbent. And I think that's what is the message in there is that the firm that you've known for so many years, the firm that has been your firm and you've known the people and the leadership. We've seen this in big acquisitions, we've seen it in small acquisitions, and candidly, it does not always happen as well, right? It's not there, while they have sold for money reasons more often than not, there are always underlying reasons where they're selling and why they've picked a firm because they genuinely believe that it's going to be better for everybody. And now better for everybody doesn't mean it's better for 100% of everybody. It's better for the collective of everybody, right? This is the whole point of why people need to evaluate. And while you most likely aren't going to take a call from a random cold caller who's telling you one thing or another may or may not be true, the reality is the same type of research and vetting should be done for the incumbent as well. The firm that you've known is really going to be trying to spin things and convincing advisors of why it's in their best interest. And it's not always the case. And that's the message here. The message here is really that about education. The message here is really don't, do the research yourself. At Bridgemark, that's what we really focus on is really educating our clients. We talk about feel, which is culture. We talk about fit, which is the business and the support, right? And the technology and the tools and the resources. We talk about financials and we talk about it in a three-legged stool. And our message here is just do the research, right? Really owe it to yourself to make sure you're making the right decision. And then that right decision, whatever that decision is going to be a wonderful decision because you can be confident and comfortable in that decision.
For sure. And I mean, my last point, Jeff, would just be, be careful who you work with. Just like a doctor, just like an attorney, just like a financial advisor. There's really, really good ones, and there's ones that aren't going to be as competent. And you're going to be getting a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of messages. Make sure you work with someone who's been through 10, 15, 20 of these acquisitions before. Inside of Bridgemark, we just have an extremely unique value proposition and have hundreds of years of management and recruiting experience inside of these independent broker dealers, even prior to us being independent broker dealers. So we've seen these acquisitions firsthand. We see how the firms react. We can help you understand what to expect and take you through a step-by-step process and be your unbiased soundboard throughout this thing to make sure you're thinking about things without an emotion. This is undoubtedly going to be one of the most emotional decisions, you'll have to make because it's in a shorter time period than normal. So it really helps to have someone seasoned by your side to really help make sense of all these things that's been through before.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there are what we see out there is there's a lot of advisors who think they are better off doing things on their own because they don't want to quote unquote pay a recruiter. I think there's a lot of recruiters out there who are really just glorified cold callers. In fact, I'm not even sure they're glorified cold callers, they're just cold callers. And but there's firms out there like ours at Bridgemark that really genuinely help advisors. I'm not going to ever say we're the only one out there. There are firms out there. I actually think it's the minority, but there are firms out there that are really credible, qualified firms to help financial advisors. And that's some of the research that as an advisor, not just on the firms, if you're going to leverage someone, and I would encourage you to leverage a consultant because you're going to learn things that you didn't even know you could learn. You're going to get opportunities. You're going to have access to information that you didn't even know was available by leveraging a consultant. But leverage that consultant and do the research on the consultant, and that decision will be returned in spades. And the right consultants will also help you truly evaluate the incumbent. I know we've done that on countless occasions where we've had countless advisors come to us and we've literally told them, based on what you need, you're be better off just staying where you are, staying the path. And that's an important decision, to really have somebody who's really looking out for the advisor's best interest.
Yeah, just to add a little bit more, Jeff, in the short amount of time, you're going to be speaking with so many people from so many different firms, technology demos, marketing demos, economic presentations, spreadsheets, all of these different things. Really just helping have somebody help take the sales spin out of all of these different things and put, actual information that's accurate on a piece of paper. Really the only thing we're trying to do is empower you with the information to make a smart decision. Whether that's stay or go, you're never going to get pressure from us. But if we give you that information that you need, you're going to have what you need to be able to make a confidence decision either way.
Maybe there's one last statistic I'll put on top of that, Corey, which because I think it's such a great point. And at Bridgemark, we're really fortunate. And from the research I've done inside of our industry, I think we're kind of in a unique scenario like this, that literally 95% of our business finds us. It's really referral-based advisors that are finding us. And so what you just said about really being that guiding, kind of guiding light, guiding guide for financial advisors, it comes back to us with referrals from other advisors. And that's really what we focus on.
I love it. I love it. Do you want to cover anything else?
I think we're good.
All right. All right. Well, Jeff, I appreciate your time. As always, we've been through a ton of these together with the Bridgemar team as a whole, and this has been a long time coming. Literally within the last week of us deciding to make this, another firm has sold. So this is something that's going to continue to happen, and hopefully, this is super helpful for any advisor that's ever put in that uncomfortable situation. I thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Corey.